When you think of Chevrolet muscle cars, you probably imagine roaring V8s, tire-shredding burnouts, and iconic machines like the Chevelle SS, the Camaro Z28, or the Corvette Stingray. Chevy has built some of the greatest muscle legends in history, cars that defined generations and inspired countless enthusiasts. But not every Chevrolet with muscle car DNA lived up to the hype. In fact, some of them left fans disappointed, frustrated, and even angry. From watered-down engines to misguided design choices, a few Chevys have gone down in history as the most hated muscle cars the brand ever made. Number 10. The Chevrolet HHR SS was born in the late 2000s during the retro design craze. Inspired by the 1949 Chevy Suburban, it was a quirky, box-shaped wagon meant to blend utility with nostalgia. However, Chevrolet decided to slap the legendary SS badge on it, and that's where the backlash began. While it did have a turbocharged 2.0L four-cylinder pushing out 260 horsepower, making it quick for its class, muscle car enthusiasts scoffed at the idea. To them, an SS should roar with V8 power, not whine with turbo boost. The HHRSS looked like a family-friendly grocery getter, not a performance icon. And despite its surprising speed, fans saw it as Chevy diluting the SS badge. It wasn't truly awful, but angered purists enough to land on this list. Number 9. The fourth-generation Camaro brought back sleek styling and real muscle with its LT1 and later LS1 V8 engines. But the entry-level V6 versions became the butt of countless jokes. With just around 160 horsepower at first, these cars were drastically underwhelming compared to their V8 siblings. They had the Camaro look, but none of the bite, earning them the label of poser cars. Many owners bought them just for the aggressive styling, but performance enthusiasts mocked them for being all show and no-go. The worst part? The stripped-down interiors and cheap materials made the cars feel less like a Camaro and more like a plastic budget coupe. The V6 Camaros weren't truly bad cars, but they dragged down the image of the Camaro nameplate, which was supposed to symbolize affordable American muscle. Number 8. The late 70S Caprice Classic Brougham embodied everything muscle car fans hated about the downsized, emissions-choked era. Earlier Caprices and Impalas had been beasts, available with big block V8s that made them powerful cruisers with serious muscle cred. By the late 1970s, however, the Caprice had ballooned in weight while losing its heart. Strangled by smog regulations and the oil crisis, its engines barely made 130 to 160 horsepower, numbers that would have been laughable just a few years earlier. Buyers who remember the brute strength of Chevrolet's full-size machines saw the new Caprice as an overweight, underpowered embarrassment. Worse, the Brougham trim emphasized plushness and luxury instead of performance, cementing its reputation as a weak and bloated shell of its former self. Number 7. The Chevette was never designed to be a muscle car. It was a cheap, compact economy car built to compete with Japanese imports and to survive the fuel crisis. But Chevy made a mistake when it tried to give the Chevette sporty trims and packages to attract younger buyers. With its tiny engines as low as 52 horsepower and sluggish acceleration, it was the exact opposite of everything Chevrolet muscle cars were known for. To purists, putting stripes and badging on a Chevette was an insult to the Camaro, Chevelle, and Corvette heritage. Enthusiasts despised the attempt to market it as something fun or cool, and while the Chevette sold well due to its affordability, it became one of the most hated nameplates ever linked, however loosely, with Chevy performance. Number 6. The El Camino was once a unique muscle car truck hybrid with real bite. Earlier models packed powerful V8s and a cult following, but by the 1980s, the El Camino had lost nearly all its charm. Instead of muscular engines and aggressive styling, buyers were stuck with underpowered small blocks and even 6 cylinders that could barely move the car. The styling had grown tired, blending awkwardly between a weak pickup and a bloated sedan. Many enthusiasts argue that the 1980s El Camino had no clear identity. It wasn't practical enough to be a real truck and wasn't fast enough to be a muscle car. For fans of the glory days of El Camino SS big blocks, the later models were a complete letdown, a forgotten relic that soured the name. Number 5. The Berlinetta trim of the Camaro was Chevrolet's attempt to reach a luxury market, but ended up alienating muscle car fans. Instead of focusing on horsepower and speed like the beloved Z28, The Berlinetta prioritized comfort and quirky gimmicks. It featured soft suspension, a plush interior, and most famously, a bizarre Starship-style digital dashboard that looked like something out of Star Trek. While futuristic at the time, it felt completely out of place in a Camaro, a car meant for performance and raw driving excitement. Worse, its engines were weak compared to Z28, making it more of a cruiser than a muscle machine. Enthusiasts hated it for watering down the Camaro's image, and to this day, the Berlinetta is remembered as one of the least desirable trims Chevy ever produced. Number 4. When Chevrolet brought back the Impala SS in the 1990s, fans expected the return of a true muscle sedan. On paper, it sounded promising. It had the LT1 V8 borrowed from the Corvette, pushing around 260 horsepower. But in reality, the Impala SS was a heavy, bloated four-door based on the Caprice, and it handled more like a police cruiser than a performance car. Its styling was too conservative, and enthusiasts felt cheated by how tame it was compared to the Impalas of the 60s. Worse, Chevy plastered the iconic SS badge on a car that, for many, simply didn't earn it. The result was a car that confused buyers. It wasn't a luxury car. It wasn't a true muscle car. And in trying to be both, it ended up disappointing nearly everyone. Number 3. The Aero Coupe Monte Carlo SS was designed with NASCAR in mind, featuring a sloped rear glass to improve aerodynamics. On the racetrack, it had its purpose, but on the street, buyers felt ripped off. Under the hood was a 305 V8 making only around 180 horsepower, numbers that were weak even in the mid-80s. While it looked like a performance car, it couldn't deliver the thrills people expected from an SS badge Chevrolet. To make matters worse, its unusual bubble rear glass design was polarizing. Some loved the NASCAR connection, but most thought it looked awkward. For many fans, this car was proof that Chevy had lost touch with what made the Monte Carlo SS special. Number 2. When the third-generation Camaro debuted in 1982, its sleek wedge-shaped design promised a return to muscle car dominance. But then came the base model with the infamous Iron Duke engine, a 2.5 L4 cylinder, making a pathetic 90 horsepower. Yes, a 90 horsepower Camaro. For many fans, this was the lowest point in the Camaro's history. It was embarrassing to drive a car that looked fast but struggled to keep up with economy sedans. The Iron Duke Camaro became the butt of countless jokes and is often remembered as one of the worst decisions Chevrolet ever made. It didn't just disappoint. It damaged the Camaro's reputation for years, making muscle car enthusiasts furious at GM's willingness to sacrifice performance for fuel economy. Number 1. At the very top of the most hated list sits the Chevelle Malibu of the late 70s and early 80s. The Chevelle name was once sacred. It represented raw power, iconic styling, and some of the greatest muscle cars ever made. But after 1973, the Chevelle slowly lost its edge, and by 1977, when it transitioned into the Malibu, it was a shell of its former self. Gone were the big blocks, the menacing styling, and the muscle car soul. In their place were weak V6S and smog-strangled small blocks that barely produced 115 to 130 horsepower. The Malibu became nothing more than a bland family sedan, completely divorced from the Chevelle's muscle car heritage. Fans felt betrayed, as Chevrolet had taken one of its most iconic names and run it into the ground. For many, this Malibu remains the ultimate example of how far muscle cars have fallen, and why it is remembered as the most hated Chevrolet muscle car ever built.